On paper, SIFU has everything I love. It's an indie roguelike with hand-to-hand combat that's Batman Arkham by way of Dark Souls. Its levels are directly inspired by landmark action scenes from movies like Old Boy, John Wick, and Kill Bill. And its art style and animations are beautiful, fluid, and incredibly cinematic. But in practice, SIFU is hard to play, hard to put down, and hard to recommend. The opening level of SIFU serves as the one and only tutorial, with you fighting your way through a kung fu school to defeat its master and, for some reason, a child hiding under a table. But thanks to a magical medallion, the child dodges death and vows revenge. Once you've played the tutorial, that's it. There's no more explanation of moves or story exposition. You'll be set loose as that child, now in their 20s, to bash heads against walls and controllers against couch cushions. With no way to refresh myself on basic moves like dodging or parrying, I'd meet a tough enemy, die a couple times, get extremely frustrated, and start over. The closest I can compare learning the moves to is learning a fighting game in an arcade. Sure, the cabinet has buttons and they say punch, kick, and block, but it's up to you to figure out how to do a Hadouken. And that's not to say it's a bad thing. Once I finally mastered the invaluable dodge and punish moves, the appeal of SIFU crystallized, and I would fall into combos of kicks, punches, and finishes with ease. But getting to that point took ages. The big problem with the combat is that there's little to differentiate a successful parry or dodge if you don't know exactly what to look for. I mean, sometimes I dodge and follow up with a devastating punish, and other times I do the exact same thing, only for the enemy to block and knock me down. It's easy to see it as inconsistent or broken, when really it's just a super complicated and nuanced system that I hadn't yet mastered. But you know, they say practice makes perfect, and if you fight an enemy 700 times, you will eventually learn how to beat it. The repetition of its roguelike structure feeds into the trial and error of its combat. Every time you're defeated, a year is added to your character's death count, which in turn dictates how many years you age on your next defeat. Die 5 times in a row, you'll age 1, 2, 3, 4, then 5 years each time. And for every decade you age, you'll lose access to some moves and a little bit of your max health, but you'll deal more damage. Once you hit 70-ish, it's game over, and goodbye to any skills or buffs you've unlocked. But the image of an 80-year-old man smashing a head in one hit, kinda cool. I'd find myself finishing levels with my character in their 60s, setting me up for failure in the next. Like learning its combat, learning enemy encounters and buff-giving shrine locations through multiple playthroughs is the only way to keep your age as low as possible. Each of the 5 levels introduces you to a new boss with a unique attack that the level will slowly teach you to overcome. The club, for example, sees you working through enemies who attack low and high before a final boss that wields a fiery cane who loves to trip you over. The way it felt like I was being primed for the boss battles of each area and that my skills were being built with each new encounter kept me coming back. It made the grinding of run after run rewarding, as once tough enemies now took only a couple of well-timed hits to take down. Infuriatingly, a combat move called Focus that allows you to slow down time and try and stun your opponent is completely taken away in a late-game boss battle.
Don't bother trying that over.
Unlike all the combat encounters before this, there's no precedent, and it came completely out of nowhere. I had spent hours memorizing levels and moves to unlock specific buffs to my focus meter, and then suddenly it was all useless. That doesn't feel like challenge, that feels like bad game design. What I'm getting at here is that mastery, or at least advanced understanding of SIFU's combat system, levels, and patterns is really what the game is all about. You'll repeat the same moves in the same places against the same enemies for hours until you can almost do them in your sleep. Then you'll move to the next level and start that all over again. I loved SIFU, eventually, but that isn't a reason for you to play it. For every inch of progress, there were miles of repetition. It's a game built around one of the best combat systems I've ever played, but as a complete package, its thin story and, at times, unrewarding repetitive gameplay make it a time sink with no satisfying payoff. SIFU is hard to play, hard to put down, and hard to recommend. Pass. For more Play or Pass reviews, make sure you're subscribed to ABC Gamer and check out our weekly news and culture wrap-up, The Loot Drop, every Monday at 5 PM.